I have a PhD in DUMB. That's what you get when you're in business. Just be ready to make lots of mistakes and don't be discouraged by them. Figure out a way so it doesn't happen again.
Hi, I'm Dr. D from Dr. D University, and I am so happy today to introduce everyone to Denise Coulter.
You learn and you go forward, and you mess up something else, and you learn and you go forward.
Denise, a lot of our international audience may be unfamiliar with you and some of the work that you do. Please tell us about yourself and your work as an entrepreneur.
25 years ago, right at this time, I was working on purchasing a Subway franchise. My mom and I had decided to be partners and put in a Subway in a small town of about 1,100 people. We did some research. We went to Alpine, Texas, which has 5,000 people, which was the smallest town we could find with a Subway, and they were doing really well. So we continued with our quest. We went to the bank, and my mom was so sure that she could borrow the money just on her signature. And we went to the bank that she had banked at for years, and they told us no. And we walked out, and she was upset. I was not really surprised, but she was very upset. We decided to go to the local bank in Cross Plains, Texas. And the banker was a little bit hesitant because restaurants don't have the greatest history. Of course, it's better if it's a franchise, but he wasn't real high on it, but he was very keen on increasing the economy in Cross Plains and bringing new things to Cross Plains. So that's why he considered us. The first thing he did was send us to the Small Business Development Center to write a business plan, which we did. They gave us a piece of software that I still use for a cash flow. Okay. And that's one of the most useful things that I have ever had. Every time we started another location, we put that cash flow to use. Now, the cash flow is only as good as the numbers you put in it. And that first project, we put in what an average Subway store sells in a week into our cash flow. And unfortunately, that isn't what happened. When you're in a town of 1,100, you don't get that much business. For a couple of days, everybody in town came in and we were like, we are in the money. Mm-hmm. But then reality set in, and the first year, 18 months, was horrible. We were losing money. We couldn't pay ourselves. In fact, my first paycheck came 6 years after we started in business. We were saved because we had purchased a large building, and that large building had at least half of it still available, and a local hospital here in Abilene wanted to open a clinic in Cross Plains, and they leased half of that building. And that's what saved us. They leased it for 5 years, and that provided the cash flow that we needed to continue in business. We could tell that this was a good business. We just didn't have the right traffic. And so we're failing. We're not making any money. We're paying all our bills. I remember my mom saying once, we have a tiger by the tail, and we can't let loose of it because we had to keep the store open and keep making sandwiches to pay the bank, to pay off the equipment, to pay the electric bill. And we had these bills we had to keep paying, so we kept operating. And since we were not doing well, we decided to open another location. And we opened that location in a town about 20 miles away that was located on an interstate highway. A little bit bigger, a town of only 3,500, but the interstate traffic was wonderful, and that store cash flowed right from the start. And after we'd been open there about 6 months, I received my first paycheck for all of my efforts for 6 years. And it really wasn't that big. It wasn't for the whole 6 years. It was just for a couple of weeks. But I felt like I had succeeded. We operated that store for about 2 years, and then we opened another store in another small town on the interstate. And at that point, my husband was able to quit his job offshore and come home, which had been one of my big goals. And he came home. He ran one store, I ran another store, and then we had a manager in one store. And that was my first experience with really delegating out my authority to somebody else, to my husband and to the manager. So that was a kind of a different experience for me. And one day I was reading in the newspaper that Abilene was going to get another Walmart Supercenter. And I had also heard that Subway had a contract with Walmart. So I immediately called our development agent and asked him, could you put us down as the franchisee for that location? And he did. And it took about maybe 15 months for that store to be built, for us to go in and put in our store. And while we were in there, I haven't mentioned this, but we did all our own construction up until this point. Yes, all of our construction. We didn't put up the buildings in Cross Plains and Cisco, but we did the plumbing, the electrical. We laid the tile on the floors. We did everything. Now, in Abilene, we couldn't do all those things because there's a lot of rules and regulations and permits that you have to get. But we could hang our own wallpaper. And I was up on scaffolding, hanging wallpaper, and my mom would put the glue on it and hand it up to me, and I would put the wallpaper up on the wall. And while I was doing that, one of the other owners here in town came in and said, my wife and I are having health problems. Do you want to buy our stores? And I climbed down off the scaffolding, and my mom and my husband and I went and huddled in the corner and whispered, and we turned around and we said, yes, we do. And at that point, we decided on a number, and it took us probably 7 months to get that SBA loan because the bank wanted it. We did SBA loans all along. It took us about 6-7 months to get that SBA loan. So in the matter of 6 months, we went from 3 stores to 8 stores. And it was kind of crazy. That was a really true growth period. And what was the hardest part was when that gentleman was still running his stores, he kind of let things go downhill. And as he knew that the closing time was approaching, he quit hiring people and replacing people. So we took over 4 stores, and between 4 stores, we had 9 employees, plus my husband and myself. So he would go open one store, I would open another one. There happened to be 2 managers that did stay with us. And we would work through lunch, and we would go after lunch, we would meet, we would eat lunch with each other. And because we were tired, then we would go to the matinee of a movie to sleep because it was cool and it was dark. And after that, we would leave the movie and go back to the store and close the stores. And then we would have to drive back 45 miles to our home because we had put every dime we had into buying those 4 stores. And we were exhausted all the time, but we made it through. And it was hard. We used that cash flow instrument, that cash flow software that I got at the Small Business Development Center. We used it every time we purchased a store. And we got better at predicting what the numbers were going to be. And we had, at that point, we had 8 stores, and we had the opportunity. Well, the development agent called me and said, if y'all don't put a store out by Abilene Regional, I'm going to find somebody that will. So we got busy, and we went out there and looked at land, and land was terribly expensive. And we called the development agent and said, I just don't think we can do this. And he said, well, if I get somebody, if somebody comes in and is interested, I'm giving them that franchise. Well, they don't give it to you, but he was going to allow them to purchase one. So we kept watching. This was about 2007. Land prices were sky high out at that area. But then in 2009, he called us back and said, I've got somebody. We said, give us a week. And we went out there and started looking at property, and we found property that had been about 40% higher, marked down. It was less. So we were able to purchase a piece of property out there. And I remember at the time calculating how many sandwiches we would have to make to pay for that property, but I don't remember that number now. I wish I had written it down. But we figured that out, and we decided we could do it. It was a real risk for us because we paid more for that piece of property than we had paid for the 4 stores we purchased here in Abilene. Just the stores, no property. But anyway, it worked out. But we were lucky because the 2008 financial crisis came and drove land prices down. So we purchased the land and we put in that store, and that store is one of the busiest stores from Fort Worth West in Texas. We put a drive-through, which was kind of a new experience for us, and it's rare in Subway, but that store is a real dynamo and kind of put us over the top on success and enabled us to pay off some of our notes a little bit early. At that point, we had 9 stores. We've since sold off 1 store. We felt like it was not, the customer base was not the customer base that we wanted to deal with. And all of our customers were ugly to our employees. And we decided we didn't want to deal with those people anymore. So we sold that store to another franchisee. And I don't know, our employees are really important to us. And it's a hard balance to work. But when it came down to that, the employees won out on that one. We felt like we were selling our soul to put our employees in that position. Just didn't feel right to us. So we got out of that one. So we've had 8 stores now since that point. This whole journey started in 1995. And here we are in 2020. And we're kind of going through a lot of the things we went through at the start. We were able to get some of the assistance, the payroll protection plan. We were able to, and we've just now run out of that money. And now we're having to start paying the money out of the proceeds we're bringing in, and we're down about 30%. And 30%, when you're down 30%, you're just covering your fixed costs and a little bit. So we're about to start plugging numbers back into that same cash flow software to see where we are, and we will have to adjust our pay to make sure everything continues to work. I remember one of the hardest times I ever had was we had a Zoom meeting with our managers because we weren't supposed to be meeting anymore, and they had shut down all in-store dining. And we had a Zoom meeting with the managers, and we just told them, your jobs are secure. We will keep all of you. We may have to put you all in one store and y'all run that one store, but your jobs are secure. And just stick with us through this. And we lost 1, but that's just probably a normal attrition that occurs. But this is kind of like, it feels like starting over again. And it's a new challenge and a new, I guess just a new challenge is the best way I have to put it. I wish it hadn't happened, and I'm sure there's many, many people that wish this hadn't happened. But it's where we are, and I wish we'd sold our stores in 2011 or 12 when we had some offers on them. We've lost a lot of money by not doing that, but we don't have 2020 foresight, but we have 2020 hindsight. But I love working with our managers, and that's what I really concentrate is working with our managers. And about 5 years ago, I knew that my leadership and my communication skills were not what they needed to be. I was supervising 8 people, and then they had their people that they supervised, but I just wasn't leading them in the right way. So I really started working on going to conferences, listening to people, reading books about leadership and communication, I joined Toastmasters, and that has been really helpful on my feedback. I had no idea that Toastmasters taught you how to give feedback, but they do. I began studying a lot of John Maxwell's materials, and I actually then went and became certified in his materials and started doing things like personality assessments with our managers and on us,
Mhm.
and talking with our managers about how to use that information, how to read customers, how to read employees, and then started using it on, I learned to speak their language instead of my language, and that helped a lot. And then we started teaching them leadership skills, and that helped even more. And when I saw the improvement in them, I thought this is something really important, and every small business needs that. So at that time, I started my own company called Coulter Solutions, and I specialize in communication, leadership, and behavioral assessments. And I just want to help other small business owners that got into this because they wanted to run something, but then when they start having to deal with people, they don't have the people skills that they need. And I want to help them like I was helped with people many years ago.
What advice do you have for a young entrepreneur who's not sure whether they should take that step or not?
If you're going to go into it full time, you're going to quit whatever you're doing and go into it full time, because that's what I did. I quit a good job. I was teaching at a university, and I quit that job. I had health insurance. I had decent pay. It wasn't wonderful, but it was good pay. I had lots of time off, and I went into a job that's 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and I didn't get paid. So you gotta have a couple of years worth of living expenses put away. If my husband hadn't had a good job, I would have had to quit. So you've got to have some financial security. Now, if you're doing it on the side, that's a different story. It may not happen as quickly, but you're probably a lot more secure. But definitely have some money in the bank. Don't use every dime you have, because that's what we did. Every dime we had. When we went to Connecticut for our sandwich school, somehow in all my calculations of the money that we borrowed, I forgot to include the freight on all the equipment, and it was $3,500. So somewhere we had to save $3,500. One of the things that we canceled, one of the places I found that, we cannot rent a car and we can walk back and forth. It's only a mile from the hotel to the subway headquarters. But the hitch was we went from December 12th to December 23rd. So we walked back and forth to subway headquarters in knee-deep snow for a couple of, well, we didn't do it every single day because we found some friends that were going to sandwich school also, and they gave us a ride. But we also said, well, we just won't eat very much while we're there. And so we ate out of the vending machine at the hotel, and we both lost about 10 pounds in the 2 weeks. And when we landed in Dallas, the first thing we did was stop at a steak and ale and eat steaks. But we saved money different places, and we were able to pay for the freight for the equipment.
Wow.
I have a PhD in DUMB. That's what you get when you're in business. Just be ready to make lots of mistakes and don't be discouraged by them. Figure out a way so it doesn't happen again.
So this is a question that young ladies always have, and they say, as a lady, did you have any obstacles that maybe a man wouldn't have had? Or if I were to flip the question, did you have any advantages that maybe a man wouldn't have had?
I do think we had an advantage because the bank was kind of excited about being able to loan to a business that was owned by women. So I think that might have been a small advantage. But, I never thought about it that it was a disadvantage to be a woman. I never thought of it that way. Part of that's my personality style, because I'm very direct and kind of domineering and tell people what to do. So sometimes maybe that was an obstacle for me, and I have learned how to control that most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time. I think there weren't a lot of female franchise owners at that time. And when my mom and I would go to meetings, we were both very outspoken. And I think that a lot of the men thought that was kind of strange that we would speak up and say what we thought. Mm-hmm. Now, I would say in the last 10 to 15 years, it doesn't feel strange. It feels like respect now, not what do you think you're doing? And perhaps that's the fact that I've gained knowledge that maybe I didn't have then. But at this point now, I feel respected.
Because most of the businesses that you own are in West Texas. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's any special advantages to opening a business in West Texas that maybe you wouldn't have somewhere else? Or are there any disadvantages?
Well, there's both. You know everybody, or you know a lot of people. You can know a lot of people. There's a huge difference between operating the businesses here in Abilene and operating the businesses in the small towns. Mm-hmm. We operate in 3 small towns. The biggest one has about 5,000 people. Okay. So when we go to hire somebody, we can usually ask someone that works for us, do you know them? What do you know about them? We can find out a lot. So that's different in Abilene, even though Abilene isn't really considered a big city. It's 120,000 people. That's an advantage of being in West Texas. I think it's a very friendly place. I think a lot of people like to see you succeed. Mm-hmm. One of the disadvantages right now is that West Texans are independent and very freedom conscious. And right now, with us enforcing the masking of our customers to come in, some customers have left us because we want them to wear a piece of cloth across their face for 10 minutes. So that is a disadvantage of this area. The freedom, the patriot, we're going to do things our way. That's a disadvantage right now, where in the past it's been an advantage.
That's interesting. I would have never thought about people not coming back because of the face mask.
They walk away. If they are going to have to put a mask on, we have masks for them, but they are not going to wear that mask. I want to protect my employees. Mm-hmm. We have several women that are pregnant right now. We have people that are immune compromised. We have people that are older. We have a lot of employees. We have people that live with their elderly parents that are at high risk. And I'm just not going to put any of my people at risk because I'll lose a customer. So.
And I like how you look at your employees as kind of a family, mm-hmm. Even in the face of customers. I think that's really awesome. And kind of thinking of family, you talked about all this, this tsunami of work that you've had to face over the years. How do you find kind of balance between your personal life and your professional life, but then also just juggling all of the different locations and everything else you've got going on? How do you juggle and balance?
I don't know. I don't know how we do it, but somehow we do. Usually, if I know a family gathering is occurring, I can plan around it, but sometimes things fall through the cracks and I don't get to go to that family gathering. But other times I'm able to make up for it. One of our daughters works with us. Mm-hmm. The other daughter lives close by. We have grandchildren that live close by. Sometimes we can't keep the grandkids when they want us to, but we have a house with a swimming pool, and the grandkids are able to come there, and they come sometimes when we're not at home, and they come sometimes when we are at home. And I usually stop. Our office is at our house, so I stop what I'm doing and I go spend the time with them when they're there. It works. And I work with my husband every single day. Our desks are about 6 feet apart. We do have disagreements, but usually one of us will back off when we see that the other one thinks it's really important. There was a time when my husband wanted to terminate someone's employment because of some of their actions. And I just didn't feel like it was right. So he stopped and said, okay, let's just keep on. And then about a year later, I agreed that he was right and we should have done it then. But if it's really important to one or the other one will back off. And we have the same values. We don't have the same personality, but we have the very same values, and that helps a lot. People ask me all the time. I've had people come and say, tell me how you work with your husband. And I said, well, you need to go get values tested and see if you have the same values, because ours, you could put the two pieces of paper on top of each other and they were the same.
Did you write a business plan? And if you did you find it to be a helpful exercise? Do you update it, or is it something you kind of do once and then don't really come back?
We had to write a business plan because the banker insisted on it. I had to do research on demographics, which is easy when there's 1,100 people. I had to do research on how many cars went down the highway. So I learned about that. And I used that same knowledge when we opened the other stores on the interstate. I was able to compare what we had in the first small town with what happens on the interstate, and it showed a great increase. So that was a way of convincing the banker that he could loan us some more money. Mm-hmm. So yes, I have continued to use it, and that cash flow document. That's so important. Cash flow in restaurants is so important. It's vital, because you've got to pay for groceries every single week. And if you don't have the money to pay for groceries, or you've got to pay your sales tax every month. And if you don't have the cash flow to take care of that, then you're in big trouble. So the cash flow document is very important. Yes, I think everybody should write a business plan. I've done it for every single time we've taken on another store. We've learned so much. You go to the planning and zoning department, you read the deed restrictions to see if you can put up a sign, to see if you can have an opening onto the street. You look at the future plans of the city to see if they're going to put a median down the street that you just put in a $200,000 store. It's going to cut your business by 20%. We've done all of those things.
So knowing everything you know today, full 2020 hindsight, and you mentioned briefly you would have sold some of those restaurants in 2012. Was there anything else, like just totally knowing everything you know? Are there any things like, I really wish I had done that over, or I had done that a little better, or done something differently?
I wish I had better insurance back in 2013. I wish I had better insurance and a better insurance agent that sold me better insurance. Back in 2013, when we had an employee that was in our company car on company business, and he had a collision and it killed a person in the other car. Now, he was not on drugs. He was not drinking. He probably went to sleep. And I wish I'd had better insurance, because we thought we had a $2 million liability policy, but we only had a $500,000 liability policy because it was in a company car. It was just some of that fine print in the insurance. And we ended up, of course, the people sued us, and then we sued the insurance agency, and it went about, it was about 3 years before we settled. We settled through mediation. We spent all day going back and forth, and the judge that was doing the mediation came in and she said, they're just not going to take what you offered. And we said, we have put up every dime we have. We've taken money out of all our mutual fund stuff. We've taken everything out. The only thing we haven't touched are IRAs. And by law, we don't have to touch those, but we would lose 40% of the value if we do that. So we've given you everything, but we have $5,000 more that we were saving to take our 4 kids and their families on vacation. So we said, we'll add the 5,000. And the judge left. She came back. She said, they said that's not enough. We all were walking out to our cars, and the judge came running out. She said, wait, they decided to settle. And we did settle. It cost us, of course, they got the insurance policy, they got the money from the insurance company that we sued, and then we paid them $250,000. So I always recommend you get an insurance person that knows how to study your risk and how to protect you from your risk, because, and we weren't structured correctly to really protect us. We're structured now where there's nothing in the company that operates the franchises where anybody could sue and get anything. But yeah, that was a very hard time. Not to mention that person, a family of 3 kids lost their mother. Our employee was severely injured, 2 collapsed lungs, compound fracture of his forearm, and he had to go through the recovery. He was somebody that had worked for us from the time he was 16 years old, and we had complete trust in him. And he felt so guilty, and it was a very bad time for all of us. And we wanted him not to feel guilty. We kept assuring him that it was not his fault, that, sometimes things just happen, but it was terrible. And probably, well, I don't know if it's the worst thing or the best thing, but he called us. It was about 5 miles from our house where the accident was. And he called me, and we were at the scene of the accident. So we saw the people and their injuries in their car. We saw him and his injuries, and it was tragic. And it was tragic. Their loss was much greater than ours. And there's not a day that goes by that I don't pray for that family.
You mentioned that you pray for that family. Would you feel comfortable sharing a little bit of how faith has influenced your decision to enter a business and kind of the practice of your business?
I don't mind at all. I think my mom's faith was what started us out, and her prayer and her strength in her faith. I wasn't real strong in my faith at that time, but I have come to have a very strong relationship with God, and I have learned that gratitude, and that's probably my biggest prayer every day, is thank you for what you've given me. Thank you for what you've entrusted me with. Help me to be a good steward of the people, the equipment, the customers that we have. Help me to run this business the best that I can, so I can help. I guess my biggest passion is helping instill in young people a good work ethic. And I talked with a young lady yesterday. I said, honey, you are so smart, and you can do anything, but the way you're working here, if you continue this pattern, it's going to be the way you work anywhere else you ever work. You're going to take shortcuts. You're going to skip things, and it's not going to serve you well. And so I need you to give me your very best, because that's what you deserve. You deserve to have your very best, and you're not given that right now. And so I have that conversation a lot with young people, and I think my faith helps me to see the person that God created, because He created every one of us in His image, and every one of us has so much within us, and so few of us realize our potential and reach for our potential, or even get halfway close to our potential.
So I was asked the 2 final questions are always kind of the same for all my interviews. The first is, I am positive that any young entrepreneur that sees this video is going to be inspired by your story. And if they're local and they'd like to visit some of your locations, or if they're international and they just like to get in touch with you, how could they do that?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to visit with any of them. They can reach me at denisecoulter.com. I'm about to get a Facebook business page going. They are welcome to look at my personal page also, which is just Denise Coulter. So I would love to visit with any of them, encourage them to contact with me. I enjoy that. It's, like I said, it's part of my mission.
And then my final question is, do you have any final messages for young entrepreneurs who have seen this video?
Well, don't give up on your dream. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it, because you can. Maybe you can't do it right this second, but you can do it down the road. And don't let mistakes discourage you. Don't think, I made a mistake, I'm stupid. Don't say those words to yourself. I made a mistake. What can I learn from this mistake? And go forward. Because that's what's gotten us through everything that we've gone through.